The Oscars are a few days away, and we are here to talk about the 10 categories that are sometimes called below the line, technical, craft. They make up a good portion of the categories, so we will be sharing our predictions with you. I'm here with Zach Laws, Tony Ruiz, and Amanda Spears. And Amanda, we better start with you since it's in large part thanks to you that we will actually be seeing 3 of these categories live on the telecast. I'm talking about best editing, cinematography, and makeup, which the Academy had threatened to push to the commercial breaks and then show later in the telecast without people walking to the podium. So Amanda, what do you have for best editing?
Oh, I don't think we have Amanda.
Okay, well, I'll just keep talking then. So we all think that this race is between Bohemian Rhapsody and Vice, which are actually the worst reviewed films to be nominated in this category in at least 2 decades. Because, before this year, this decade, the editors had never nominated a film that had, less than a 70 on Metacritic. Even when Best Picture would find something like The Reader or The Help, the editors would always avoid it. But this year it's strange because our 2 frontrunners are these 2 movies that the critics did not respond to. So Amanda's got Vice. Tony, you're the only one of the 4 of us that has Bohemian Rhapsody. So Tony, how about you start us off? Why do you have Bohemian Rhapsody?
I honestly, at this point, I look at the 2 films who are mostly frontrunners, and I go, okay, yeah, do the critics love these films? No. Do I love these films? No. But are they going to go with the one that? Which one is more popular across? More like, which one feels like more of a popular hit? The Academy memberships expanded tremendously, and it just seems like Bohemian Rhapsody, for no other reason than it ends. I think about like the Emmys, about the impact moment, and of course that whole last sequence of Bohemian Rhapsody is just like editing backwards and forwards. And I just feel like of the 2 films, they probably actually like Bohemian Rhapsody better. It's probably going to win more Oscars than Vice.
Vice has more nominations, though.
But are they passionate about that? Are any of those nominations going to pan out? Are any of those nominations going to pan out? Really?
One.
Except for makeup, which what won BAFTA for editing?
It was Vice, which is why I think it's sort of in the front runner position, because aside from last year where they went for Baby Driver over Dunkirk, which was the Guild winner, BAFTA does have a pretty good track record in picking the film editing winner. They picked Hacksaw Ridge when most people were assuming that it was La La Land, for instance. But I think that's why most people are going with Vice, just because the guilds have been aligning with Bohemian Rhapsody, but it seems like BAFTA might be a safer choice. I actually, since I've already interrupted Tony, I might as well say I had switched to Bohemian Rhapsody as well before we got on, mostly for the reasons why Tony was putting forward. I think the reasons why these 2 films are in the front runner position is because they're the most edited out of any of the 5. And we know that they tend to go for that. I think that if it does win, it's mostly for the Live Aid sequence and all the other musical sequences that came before it, because they're very energetically cut together. I think there's also a small portion of the Academy, or maybe even larger than we think, that looks at the editing of this film as somewhat of a miracle, considering what went into it production-wise. If there is a spoiler, I think that it's Black Klansman, which would be, a better reviewed pick. Also, not for nothing, but Spike Lee has been singling out Barry Alexander Brown and Terrence Blanchard at every single television interview and acceptance speech that he's given over the last week.
Yeah, and I actually just switched to Bohemian Rhapsody because I think like Whiplash, and I'm not saying they're similar films, but I think it's that last 20 minutes that could win it because there's a lot of flash edits and cuts, and they've got to get the band members that are still alive and the crowd shots. And
Yeah, I've got all your predictions pulled up, but I just had to refresh Zach's and Amanda. It says updated 1 minute ago. So thanks very much. Yeah,
it's a hard category, damn it.
It's a hard category because First Man won the Critics' Choice Award, and then Roma won the most Critics Awards for Best Editing, and then we have neither of them here. So I'm sticking with Vice, which has been the front runner kind of since nominations came out. I was very concerned when it lost Ace, especially since it didn't lose to Bohemian Rhapsody. It actually lost to The Favorite. But the BAFTA win kind of reconvinced me that it's the one that I should be going with because Vice is on better footing at the Oscars than it was at BAFTA. BAFTA favors movies that have more cuts more than the Oscars do in this category. And then BAFTA also has its British bias, obviously, and Vice is the American film, Bohemian Rhapsody is the British film. So if Vice could win there, I think it'll be fine for the Oscars. I'm intrigued by The Favorite, which I think is kind of in the Moonlight position for Best Picture a few years ago, where it's been nominated every step along the way. It's never been the front runner. It did pick up that Ace Comedy win. And then as for Green Book and Black Klansman, the last two nominees, I'd say that they're just here to kind of demonstrate their prowess in the Best Picture race.
Even though Vice has the most editing, I could see enough Academy members being really turned off by the editorial style of it. It's the same kind of thing that Hank Corwin did in The Big Short, but sort of dialed all the way up to 11. I'm not saying, obviously, there's enough people who liked it to nominate it, but I do wonder if there is a contingency of people who despise Vice, if they're just not going to, if they're going to be resistant to voting for it here, especially.
We'll move on to Best Cinematography, which I think we can just zip right through. I'd say this is one of the only two categories that we're going to talk about today that I would consider absolutely locked, and the other one is makeup. I would not say song is. I will mention that Cold War won the American Society of Cinematographers Award, but that is a society unlike all the other guilds where it's not a broad membership of, random two people or what do we always say? DJs and SAG and clowns and all that kind of stuff. ASC is a group of about 300 people, just like the Oscar cinematography branch. It's by invitation only. So they're very elitist. And I could see how they didn't want to award Alfonso Cuarón since he is a director primarily. But with a broad group like Oscars or we just saw at BAFTA, I don't think they care about, who's the cinematographer for the film, especially since the names aren't even on the ballot.
Yeah, I would say that, this might be one of those times when not having the name on the ballot is sort of beneficial, because I do wonder if you saw the name Alfonso Cuarón so many times, how many times you would actually want to vote for him to be winning awards. But yeah, I agree with you, Riley. It's that ASC win is sort of typical of what they do. I think they have about a 40% overlap with the eventual Oscar winner, because it is just cinematographers voting for that prize, and they are very cliquey, and they're probably, it's a miracle that it got nominated for the ASC, to begin with.
Yeah.
I always find it amazing. I always find it amazing, because I know Steven Soderbergh, shoots all of his own films, but for at least a lot of his films during his peak, he was using a pseudonym as, and even I think got nominated. Did he get nominated under his pseudonym?
No,
I forget what his pseudonym is.
Peter Andrews. He's never
Peter
been
Andrews. That's right.
He's never been nominated for cinematography, even like Traffic, which won some critics prizes, because it was like common knowledge that he was the cinematographer. Certainly cinematographers knew that there was no Peter Andrews
and then
walking the earth. And
like even at the Emmys, where Behind the Candelabra would like sweep the Emmys and then it would lose cinematography to Top of the Lake. So best makeup I mentioned was the third category of our group that we're talking about today that was supposed to be shuffled off to the commercials. But I noticed that nobody really cared that best makeup was being shuffled off. You know, all the A-listers and directors who were tweeting about it, they're like, oh, how dare they shuffle cinematography and editing. But, you know, makeup only has 3 nominees, so I think that's pretty indicative of how people feel about it. Vice is the frontrunner over the other nominees, Border and Mary Queen of Scots. Vice won multiple Guild Awards for makeup and prosthetics, and then Mary Queen of Scots won hairstyling, and Border was not recognized because they do not know what Border is. Also worth noting is that the favorite won BAFTA. So is this one just as locked as cinematography?
I think anybody who's picking like Mary Queen of Scots or Border is smoking something that's very strong. I can't. This is
not the place to put your 500-point bag.
Yeah.
Just go with the consensus. Go with Vice.
This was over the moment that trailer dropped where we first saw Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. Yeah. I mean, I know that both of the other movies have their fans, but I just, you know, even aside from the fact that it's just outstanding work, you know, it's the one Best Picture nominee in the category. You know, it's making somebody into a real life person who we all have a recent memory of. You know,
unfortunately,
yeah, you know, it's not a good memory, but depending on what side of the aisle you stand on.
And since they've expanded the Best Picture lineup, it's been 9 years. 7 occurrences have had a Picture nominee in this category. 7 for 7. That, I don't care what stats you don't want to believe in anymore. That's a good one to go with in this. Yeah. Don't put your 500-point bet on this one.
Costume and production design. These categories, I think, are kind of like the sound categories, where they usually have a lot of the same nominees. It's often a film that wins both of them. Occasionally, it's even the same person, like Catherine Martin, winning both categories. So, Zach and Amanda, why do you have Black Panther taking costumes but not production design? Especially when they do split, it's often the period piece that is taking costumes.
Historically, when makeup and production design split, it's usually when a film is not nominated in the other category. So, for example, Marie Antoinette won costumes. They shot at Versailles, so they're ineligible for production design. Avatar wins production design. They don't have any costumes. It's very few that are nominated for both. I know everybody loves when I like give all these obscure facts. It's very, very rare when a film is nominated for both for them to split. I think maybe the last time it happened was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Gladiator. Don't quote me on that. I think that's maybe the last time. But I think the costume in Black Panther just so showy in a way we're not used to. We have this African tribe, as far all these different tribes in that opening sequence in Wakanda. It's got the superhero element, so it is a little different. And then you do have some very interesting modern costumes, which is something where they faced a lot of backlash. And it is kind of the apple in a basket of oranges, where it's very different than the others. And they always go period. Like, they always go for something in the 16th or 17th century. So I think that's where Black Panther can take costumes. And I have the favorite winning production design because I think the modern aspect of Black Panther will hurt it more there. Plus, I think a lot of people know if Ruth E. Carter wins, she is going to make Oscar history as the first African-American to win that category.
Every time I bring this up, I can just hear Chris Beecham saying to me, it's been settled since The Favorite came out. But we have seen in the last few years them not necessarily going for movies like that. I mean, I know that Phantom Thread is a movie about a fashion designer, and so it makes sense that it would win there. But it did beat out some things like Victoria and Abdul and Beauty and the Beast.
And that was also not production design. That works in
Mad Max. Another example of a movie where it's like that's not your traditional kind of winner, but it has very inventive, stylized costume designs. The Favorite is sort of the one that you should pick. But I just have a feeling that Black Panther's got to win something, and I don't know where else it's necessarily a front runner. We're going to talk about some other categories soon, but I think that this just feels like one of those places where it can be rewarded, and they have been, you know, pushing Ruth Carter out there quite a bit, much more so than they have, you know, Hannah Beachler, because I think that they know that they have a shot at making that kind of history with this. That's my point there. And I think that as far as production design goes, I feel much more confident about The Favorite winning there than Black Panther, just because it is so opulent. I know that they shot at a real palace, but I don't expect the Academy to as a whole to know that. So there's my line of thinking.
All right, Tony, why are you not buying Black Panther? Why do you have The Favorite winning both of these categories?
The problem is that it's a Marvel movie, and there hasn't been one that has won in this category. I still think that even though Black Panther got through in some very big ways, I still think that there is this somewhat snobbish element of the Academy that is reluctant to give it a Marvel. Now they gave something like Suicide Squad, makeup, but that was a year where it was like, really, it was like picking from a group of lemons, which is the best
There's
lemon.
no Best Picture nominee in the category.
No. So I'm sticking with what I think is the one that is the stronger Best Picture nominee, and the one that is more in line with where they've gone before in both categories.
The Favorite one at BAFTA pretty easily, but Black Panther wasn't nominated there. So, we only have one instance, Critics' Choice, where they've gone up against each other, right? So I think, The Favorite is a safer bet. And who knows, maybe I will end up switching to that at the end. But I just have this feeling that, I know that a Marvel movie, I'm not picking Black Panther for much else. I feel like it's got to win something, and the costumes are so eye-popping and have been talked about all year long ever since the movie came out. I just have a feeling that it might be unique enough to stand out to the Academy as a whole.
Yeah, the BAFTA snubs for Black Panther are pretty concerning. I think that The Favorite will be seen as too much of, been there, done that, even though it actually is pretty interesting design, I think, in terms of its costumes and production design. I think Black Panther is a more exciting choice, and I think you guys are also discounting the production design of Black Panther a little bit, saying that it's contemporary when they do have, this whole world in Wakanda, which is made up.
But you said, Black Panther is a more exciting pick. Well, that's what I always think of in some of these craft categories, is that they pick exciting things. Note the sarcasm. I just feel like that, they've made a bunch of changes in the Academy in terms of, the membership, but there is still, I think a bias in at least some of the tech categories for some of the more tried and true. I will be thrilled to be wrong, because then I'll be like, hey, you're finally getting with it. But until I see it, I'm not ready to jump down that hole yet.
So we'll move on to Best Original Song. This is one category that I feel like a lot of people feel is the most locked category of the night. I disagree with that. I think that A Star is Born has really struggled to win much of anything this award season, and we continually overestimate it. So I'm concerned about all the stars upsetting. Kendrick Lamar is, maybe the trendiest name in music right now. That music video is, the most beautiful music video I've seen in years, better than the movie even. And I would not necessarily say that the Oscars even believe in consolation prizes for something like A Star is Born. I think if there's passion for Black Panther and then people feel like ticking it off a bunch of times on their ballot, they'll do that.
Here's my thing, and I agree with you. I mean, we have overestimated this movie over and over again. I think that the fact that the song is so intrinsically linked to the movie itself. You know, I mean, it was in the first trailer for it. The single dropped before the movie came out. I've heard it ad nauseum for the past 5 or 6 months. If I never hear it again in my life, it'll be too soon. But I think that it's intrinsically linked to the narrative of that movie. You know, I mean, it's the catalyst, it's the turning point in the first act of the film, in a way that, you know, as good a song as All the Stars is, it's, you know, it's still the song that plays over the end credits of the movie when you're getting up to leave. So I don't know if it's going to have quite the same impact on voters as Shallow does.
I mean, this song is such a crossover in so many ways. Yeah, it didn't pick up some of the big Grammys, but it did pick up, you know, 2 Grammys, and Gaga got to present, or got to accept one, you know, at the ceremony. You know, the fact that it was nominated for record for Song of the Year, the fact that it was a huge, like, top 5 Billboard chart. I mean, original songs at the Oscars don't often do that, unless you're, you know, Pharrell Williams and Happy and blah blah blah. But I just feel like absent,
My heart will go on.
yeah, exactly. You know, when a song is that big of a hit, it's really the only one out of that category that is a huge, like, monster hit that's in the zeitgeist. It's almost, and I love using the word zeitgeist, that I just feel like it's undeniable, apart from the reasons of the consolation thing. And I think they do want to give, I think they do want to give that movie something, and that will be its place.
I think Shallow is the safe bet. I think, you know, Ken is still really cool, and he could definitely take this, but if he takes this, I might be thinking Black Panther's Best Picture chances are looking better if it makes that kind of upset at the last possible second. I'm just saying that would be a little bit of a shock at this point when it hasn't won anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think it's, you know, Shallow's a little safer, is because I think, not to say that A Star Is Born is some kind of a huge Best Picture contender either, but I think that in order for, you know, something that has been kind of written in stone ever since the movie came out to, you know, and it has, not for nothing, unlike in picture, unlike in director or actress, you know, it has delivered on winning Best Song, you know, at the Globes and at the Critics' Choice, and even, you know, won that music award at BAFTA, which is not technically song, but in a sense, I guess it is. So, I mean, it has delivered there, and I think it would be really surprising for it not to ultimately win here.
Zach, you mentioned that A Star Is Born won Best Music at BAFTA, and that's one of the reasons why the Best Original Score category is so up in the air this year, because First Man won the Critics' Choice, it won the Golden Globe, not nominated. A Star Is Born, not eligible in this category. So, Zach, you've got Black Klansman, the rest of us have Black Panther. Zach, why do you have Black Klansman? None of us even have it in our top 2.
So Black Panther does seem like a more logical choice, I guess, just because, I mean, I don't know how you can say it's a more, I guess it's a more popular film in terms of box office than Black Klansman, but I think Black Klansman's a much stronger contender overall. This could be a consolation prize for Black Panther if it doesn't win anything else. But I feel like this category is so wide open without First Man being in there. I think the internet and film Twitter would really like for If Beale Street Could Talk to win, but I don't think that is going to happen. Isle of Dogs and Mary Poppins Returns are just sort of there. Why am I picking Black Klansman? Because part of their campaign and part of Spike Lee's, like I said, with editing, you know, he's been ad nauseum bringing up Terrence Blanchard. Never been nominated before, first nomination. So glad he's here. Been such a huge part of my filmography. Been with me from the very beginning. Terrence Blanchard has been on television interviews during this week of voting. He's had magazine profiles written about him. I feel like it's hard to compare him to somebody like Ennio Morricone since this is his first nomination. But if there's a chance that somebody could like win an overdue Oscar in this category, the way that Morricone did for The Hateful Eight, I think that Terrence Blanchard is that person. And just
I think one of the. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, personally speaking, I think the music in Black Klansman is more apparent than the music in Black Panther, but maybe I'm biased there. So anyway.
And I think one thing why we're like going against the Gold Derby odds, just as a whole, is like, again, this is one of those things with the expanded Best Picture field. Only Ennio Morricone won from a non-Best Picture nominee. So I know everyone loves If Beale Street Could Talk, but really you've got to look at Black Klansman and Black Panther as having maybe just a slight edge because they're in a Best Picture nominee. So I agree. And he would be the first Black winner in 32 years. It's been in every profile about him.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing. They've been hammering that home.
I am tempted. I thought I had him in second. Thank you for pointing it out to me, Riley.
Yeah, If Beale Street Could Talk is the front runner in our odds. And I feel like it has been doing some campaigning. I feel like you guys are underestimating Mary Poppins Returns just because musicals have about 100% success rate in this category when they're actually nominated. It's so often that musicals are ineligible in this category. So I wonder, had more been nominated over the years and eligible, would they have won every time, as we've seen with, La La Land, and then going back to the musicals before it, which were Disney animated movies in the 90s?
If Mary Poppins Returns had done the kind of box office and nominations business that people thought it was going to do when it was first seen, then I would be predicting it to win here for that reason. But with just 4 nominations, no Best Picture, no Emily Blunt, it just sort of feels like an afterthought at this point, and that's why I'm not predicting it.
It's also a little bit like been there, done that. Like the music was awarded the first time. Richard and Robert Sherman both won Oscars for song and score, and some of the original music still in there. So I do think it's got kind of a clear blueprint on how to follow. I think it's what's holding it back from winning any of these categories, where it's like, how difficult is it to costume a movie when you already have one to use that's been nominated?
I think the other thing that I think Mary Poppins Return missed out on a narrative to get Mark Shaman his EGOT.
Yeah.
Because Mark Shaman's been in the business forever and has worked with everybody. And I feel like that if they had maybe pushed that he was just an Oscar away from EGOT, I think that might have helped him a little bit. But this category is so tough because I think if this is another one of those categories where the names aren't on the ballot, it's just the film, right?
Yeah.
It would have been really interesting if Alexandre Desplat had been on the ballot. His name has been on the ballot. One last year, they might have just checked him off.
Yeah.
But I'm still sticking with Black Panther. It's interesting, Zach, you say that you like the Black Klansman score better. I don't remember the Black Klansman score at all. I don't remember
the Black Panther score at all. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Didn't the Black Panther score just win a Grammy?
Well, so did the Black Klansman score.
Yeah.
So, they've all been, campaigning. I think that Blanchard just has got more of a narrative. You know what I mean? Like there's no insistence, and again, they don't have their names on the ballot, but there's no insistency to reward Ludwig Göransson, who, by the way, just from an optics standpoint, wouldn't it be something if the only award that Black Panther won was for Ludwig Göransson? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Well, that's part of why I'm predicting it. I think that maybe, the names not being on the ballot, maybe they don't necessarily remember the score of Black Panther, but they remember that it had a bunch of music from Kendrick Lamar, or at least there was a soundtrack that Kendrick Lamar put out in tandem with the movie. So I feel like that one has some memorable music, and that'll be enough in this case.
Who knows?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
this is his first nomination, so he's, you know, on the map. So
over in
Gordonson.
the sound categories, we all have Bohemian Rhapsody for sound mixing. I'd say, Tony, once again, you're the one whose predictions make the most sense in tandem, because what we often see in the sound categories is, first of all, both of them lining up with the same winner. And we also see a lot of overlap between film editing and sound mixing. So since the Oscars expanded the sound editing category 12 years ago, 10 of those 12 years, we've had a film win multiple of those three categories: film editing, sound mixing. So Zach, Amanda, and I have three films winning these three categories, which doesn't normally happen.
Mixing just to me seems like a done deal. I just feel like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody, it done, musical picture, you know, with the songs and you know the scenes where they're even like creating the songs, those montages where they're creating the songs combined with the crowd stuff. It still kind of irks me that, you know, we had live singing in one film that was mixed in flawlessly, but then, yeah, but we won't get into that. Direct your hate tweets to me. I'm still up in the air about sound editing. I just watched First Man for the first time last night, and what was remarkable to me was just how that movie sounds. The way that they recreate those launches, there's a tension in there, and oftentimes, you know, you could say that oftentimes the loudest movie might win sound editing, and so I reserve the right to change sound editing. In fact, I don't even know, what do I have in there right now? Did I switch to First Man, or do I?
You have First Man, and I think you should probably reorder your nominees, at least, since you have Bohemian Rhapsody in last.
Oh yeah, and I haven't updated those ones in a while. But I wonder if First Man can still win this, win editing.
Had it not missed in those categories like score, film editing, cinematography, supporting actress, that some of us were expecting it to get into, I think that it would have a better shot. But I just kind of wonder if it's sort of an afterthought in this category, at least, even though it does have, you know, incredible sound work. That's my only thing.
Well, here's the reality of this is that, you know, because A Quiet Place and is also like in second, is that since they've expanded Best Picture nominees are 9 for 9. So that knocks out the first two films. And usually musicals or movies that feature a lot of music win sound mixing, they don't win sound editing. And I think Black Panther is loud enough in that typical way that these people think about it to win best sound.
I'm going with Black Panther in editing and Bohemian in mixing right now. The smart thing for me to do would be to predict Bohemian in both, because they usually do go hand in hand, and not for nothing, Bohemian did win some prizes at the Motion Picture Sound Editors Guild. It, I guess, split their awards up between that and A Quiet Place. I didn't go for Black Panther in anything, even though they had nominated it there. But I don't know if that's going to hurt it with the Academy as a whole, because like Amanda said, I mean, it is very loud. It's an action movie, and they tend to sometimes go for things like that. But you
Usually
know,
they go for things like that.
Usually, yeah. But the fact that, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody got into both, that might...
well, La La Land got into both too.
And it lost both. So
yeah.
I don't know what to... But I don't think it won at the sound editor or the Mixers Guilds, if I'm correct. So
La
that
La Land won Cinema Audio Society for sound mixing.
Okay, thanks.
But it did lose the BAFTA.
Thank you. Yeah,
And the BAFTAs only give out one sound category, sound
Yeah.
award, we should say.
Who knows? We might have a Bohemian Rhapsody sweep on Oscar night. So.
It'd be fun if Bohemian Rhapsody swept these categories after La La Land lost them.
And,
Would it though?
If
Really? Would
Bohemian
it though?
Rhapsody but if Bohemian Rhapsody starts racking up Oscars, it's going to
Then,
start looking better for Best Picture.
we have to revive those folks on film Twitter who are going to no doubt be having a mini heart attack.
Yeah, like it doesn't have that
Yeah.
many nominations, but it's pretty competitive, across the board for the nominations that it has.
Yeah.
Picture really. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sound editing, like I like the argument for Black Panther, especially since I feel like it would kind of fall in the footsteps of winners like Skyfall or The Dark Knight that maybe don't pick up a lot of other Oscars, but are these big franchise blockbusters that the Academy likes. I'm going with A Quiet Place because even though it's not nominated for Best Picture or in any other category, I feel like it's kind of a pseudo Best Picture where it was just outside Best Pictures, just outside original screenplay, Emily Blunt, sound mixing, score. So I feel like a lot of people have seen it. I feel like there's a certain level of respect for it as well. And it's the most obvious sound nominee, given that it has quiet in its title.
Yeah, it'd be a great winner. But I think that the last time something won that category with only one nomination was The Ghost in the Darkness from 22 years ago. So I don't know.
Yeah, since it's like kind of the one example I can use, like I'll say it's kind of like Ex Machina winning visual effects,
Yeah.
where it only had one other nomination, but it got PGA and it was just outside of supporting actress. So it was kind of on the bubble and had been widely seen and respected, but didn't have.
But I think it could be one of those situations where, like what we saw at the BAFTAs, where they got to give Black Panther something. So this might be the easiest category.
I might actually switch to Bohemian for editing as well.
Yeah. Speaking of wanting to give Black Panther something, I guess there's one more category to talk about, which is where BAFTA rewarded it, but they can at the Oscars. So
the Oscar frontrunner is Avengers: Infinity War, which did just win 4 awards from the Visual Effects Society, including the main one. We all have First Man, though, which actually also won an award from the Visual Effects Society, not the main one. I think we have it just because it's usually the most Best Picture-y of the nominees that ends up winning here. Although I do wonder, all those voters at BAFTA who voted for Black Panther, if they'll more easily transfer their vote to another Marvel movie.
I kind of wonder if the reason that Black Panther won the BAFTA for Best Visual Effects is because it was literally the only nomination it got there, and they had
to give it something.
Yeah, because it would be so easy to predict Black Panther for this if it was nominated. I don't care that the Visual Effects Society snubbed it. I would just predict that here in a heartbeat. First Man is the most Best Picture-y of the bunch. Boy, wouldn't it be something if Avengers won this award and Black Panther went home empty-handed? That would really...
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Man,
the think pieces
I'm a pessimist.
The think pieces are writing themselves.
I think that might be what hurts Avengers here, is that we're talking about a studio that's never won an Oscar.
It's really probably First Man's, and that would be a weird visual effects winner because it's so much like supporting stuff. But I just think they're going to, check it off because it feels the most prestigious.
It'd also be weird because nobody cares about First Man.
Yeah, I mean, does anybody care about any of the 5 movies in this category?
No, because they're not nominated for Best Picture. But
yeah,
Avenger. We've seen Marvel movies have trouble winning this category in the past. Captain America. Daniel Craig has been nominated for every Marvel film, so that should tell you. It's just, I would love to see it happen. I would love to be wrong, but I'm going to go with First Man because we've been down this path before. Interstellar beat Captain America.
Yeah, and I mean, not for nothing. It's you look at the film, the Planet of the Apes movies that had these really revolutionary, eye-popping visual effects, and the first one lost to Hugo. second one lost to Interstellar. The third one lost to Blade Runner 2049. There's a pattern that emerges here. If visual effects is your lone nomination, The Jungle Book excluded, which I do think people looked at as sort of an equivalent to a Best Picture nominee in that category.
I think out of those nominees, it might have been the closest to being.
Yeah. I think that it's you're kind of grasping at straws to at times predict that. I'd say the Ex Machina thing is interesting because there were 3 Best Picture nominees in the category that year, and you definitely can argue there was some splitting from all over the place.
Yeah, I'd say last year I thought that Planet of the Apes would win because I figured that even if they hadn't seen that one, they would have seen one of the previous Planet of the Apes movies, but that didn't pan out. So I'm kind of going along the same line of thinking for the Avengers movie this year, where maybe it doesn't matter if they've seen other movies in the franchise. This year, the movie that most of the Oscars voters will have seen is First Man. All right, any final thoughts? I'm good.
Yeah.